Close your eyes. Hear the wind through pines. Taste the iron in the air. Imagine stepping off the dirt road and seeing it. A 3-story fortress of gray stone, buried in the Maine wilderness. No bells, no hymns, no light, only silence, until night falls. That's when the screaming begins. You've heard myths of witches, ghost stories about mad women chained to cellars. But this is different. This is colder. This is organized. 3 women, the Ashfords, called themselves nuns. But they weren't saints. They were surgeons of the soul, obsessed with purging what they called feminine corruption. Hundreds entered their gates seeking salvation. Fewer than half ever came out, and those who did were no longer themselves. What I'm about to tell you isn't folklore. It's pulled from hidden state archives, sealed testimonies, and the whispers that survived 2 centuries of silence. Even now, officials won't confirm the full count of bodies buried beneath those grounds. Ask yourself, why? Why has this story stayed buried? Why do official records vanish where the Ashford name appears? And why does every surviving witness describe the same thing? Women with vacant eyes, strange scars on their heads, and voices that no longer sounded human. If you keep listening, understand this. You cannot unhear what follows. This isn't just history. It's a map of the machinery behind social control, behind every institution that claims to fix you. The Ashfords were not an anomaly. They were a prototype. Cross this threshold, and you're no longer just a viewer. You're a witness. And witnesses, they don't sleep easy.
The year was 1798. Maine was still wilderness, untamed, lawless, a place where secrets could rot in the soil for centuries. That's when the Ashford women arrived. 3 figures stepping off a horse-drawn wagon. Agatha, Prudence, and Temperance. To the villagers, they seemed divine. Educated, pious, untouched by hardship. But look closer. Their eyes were wrong. Agatha's were gray and unblinking, cataloging every man, woman, and child like livestock. Prudence's hands never trembled, even in the cold. And Temperance, the youngest, smiled, but her smile stopped at the teeth. They brought letters of recommendation stamped with English crests, gold coins heavier than any seen in Millbridge, and promises of salvation for troubled women. To the frontier fathers, it was providence. Finally, someone to tame their disobedient daughters and cure their hysterical wives. Within months, construction began on their convent. But this was no church, no stained glass, no bell tower. The walls were fortress thick, windows narrow and high, basements deeper than any storage required. The men building it whispered, "This isn't holy ground. This is containment." Yet the Ashfords worked with meticulous cheer. Every stone, every lock, every drainage channel, all designed for something unseen. When questioned, Agatha's answer was always the same. Solitude purifies, and the people believed her. But the forest doesn't forget. Animals avoided the sight. Hunters heard chants in languages they didn't know. And when the first women entered the gates, the wind itself seemed to fall silent. At first, the convent's reputation spread like wildfire. Miraculous transformations whispered across taverns and church pews. Rebellious daughters returned home meek and obedient. Wives once defiant now served in perfect silence. Fathers and husbands praised the Ashfords as angels. But if angels they were, they served a darker God. Not one woman could explain what had happened inside. Not one remembered the treatments. And those who stayed too long? They simply vanished. Their names erased from family Bibles, their belongings quietly auctioned off. The Ashfords kept meticulous records, but none survived. Pages were burned, ink scraped away. What remains today are fragments, testimonies from hunters, midwives, and a physician who stumbled too close. Dr. Samuel Hartwell, a progressive frontier doctor, visited the convent under the guise of offering supplies. In private, he confessed to colleagues about what he saw: medical instruments not yet invented, diagrams of the human skull annotated in Latin, and journals describing extractions of sinful impulses through precise incisions in the brain. The Ashfords didn't believe in exorcism. They believed in rewiring the mind. And here's the question history never answers: where did they learn it? No American institution in 1798 had that knowledge. Even Europe lagged behind. Yet the Ashfords performed procedures eerily similar to psychosurgeries that wouldn't be discovered until a century later. Which means one of two things. Either they were prodigies ahead of their time, or they were following instructions not of this world. The deeper you dig into their origins, the stranger it gets. The Ashfords claimed Anglican roots, fleeing religious persecution in England. But ship manifests tell another story. There's no record of 3 Ashford women boarding any vessel to the Americas. No baptisms, no land deeds, nothing. It's as if they appeared from nowhere. Yet their gold was real, their forgeries flawless, and their knowledge horrifyingly precise. Some historians whisper of a secret society, physicians and priests who blended medicine with mysticism, an elite circle that saw sin not as a spiritual ailment, but as a neurological defect to be cut out like a tumor. If this sounds far-fetched, look at the architecture they built. The convent's basement wasn't just for storage. It was a surgical theater, reinforced doors, drainage troughs, ventilation shafts. The entire building functioned less like a monastery and more like a laboratory. And the women who entered? They weren't patients. They were subjects. Every confession, every scream, every silence, recorded. Not for salvation, but for data. When you realize this, the Ashfords stop being monsters in isolation. They become prototypes of something bigger. The first step in a lineage of institutions designed not to heal, but to control. The first screams were heard in winter. A young hunter named Thomas Brewster, tracking deer through the snow, stumbled too close to the convent's walls. What he saw through a frost-fogged basement window would haunt him forever. A woman strapped to a wooden table, head shaved, skull marked with ink. Sister Prudence holding a thin metal rod, steady, surgical. The patient screaming as the rod descended, not into flesh, but into the mind itself. Brewster fled, babbling about torture and demons. The townsfolk dismissed him. Snow blindness, exhaustion, fever. But in his descriptions, certain details never changed. The metal apparatus clamping the head. The notebooks where Agatha calmly wrote observations. The younger sister handing instruments like an apprentice. This wasn't chaos. This was ritual. Word spread in hushed tones. Hunters avoiding the forest. Mothers pulling daughters closer. But the men? They looked the other way. The convent fixed what they couldn't control. And in 1800 America, obedience was worth any cost. Deacon Morrison, the community's moral compass, visited the convent after mounting whispers. He left reassured. Or tried to. Agatha welcomed him with grace, speaking of spiritual battles and demons cast out by prayer. She showed him silent dormitories, women kneeling in perfect stillness, their eyes unfocused, their movements uniform. To Morrison, it felt wrong, too quiet, too controlled. But the explanation fit the theology of the time. Spiritual warfare was noisy. Transformation was painful. He left, but the unease followed him home. A smell he couldn't place. A silence that clung to him. He never spoke against them again. Decades later, when the convent was abandoned and local boys dared each other to explore the ruins, they found something no one expected. Scratched prayers on stone walls in dozens of hands. Bent nails inside locked cells, as if someone clawed for freedom. And in the basement, grooves in the tables where leather restraints had once been fastened. Most chilling of all, faint carvings, repeated over and over, almost desperate. Remove the eye. Historians dismiss it as superstition, but to those who study the Ashfords, it's a cipher, a clue to their true goal. They weren't saving souls, they were altering perception, removing the eye, the part of the mind that sees the world as it is. Here's where you choose. Keep watching or turn back. Because from this point, the story isn't just about them, it's about you. The same methods pioneered in that stone convent, behavioral reshaping, identity erasure, obedience conditioning, are alive today. Different tools, same purpose. And if you've felt it, the pull to conform, the hollowing of your will, you already know. Write this in the comments now. I see the Ashford eye. Write it twice. Not for me, for you. To mark the moment you woke up. The Ashfords' influence didn't die in 1803. After the convent closed under mysterious circumstances, their writings vanished into private collections, later resurfacing in elite medical schools. The techniques? Sanitized, renamed, institutionalized. Lobotomy, behavior modification, MK-style conditioning. Follow the bloodline, and you'll find the fingerprints of the Ashfords everywhere power seeks silence. The women they treated weren't insane. Many were educated, rebellious, curious, threats to the patriarchal order of frontier life. The convent became a machine to manufacture obedience, erasing what society feared most: female autonomy. But here's the chilling part. It worked. Families welcomed their daughters home, hollow-eyed but compliant. Husbands praised their wives' miraculous recovery. No one asked what was lost. Buried testimonies from surviving women described the same nightmare. Hymns sung backward, metal restraints cold against bone, and a whispered mantra: pain cleanses, silence saves. One woman claimed she could still hear it decades later, echoing in her skull. Another swore she awoke one night to find her own hands moving without her consent, folding laundry she hadn't touched. The convent's collapse was sudden. A fire, unexplained, consuming the upper floors. The sisters were never found. Some say they perished in the blaze. Others whisper they walked away, unburned, disappearing into the pines. But in sealed court records, there's a line scratched in haste by an investigator. Basement untouched, instruments gone. They took the work with them. Centuries later, when neurosurgeons pioneered frontal lobotomies, their blueprints eerily mirrored the Ashfords' methods. Coincidence? Or inheritance? Modern institutions may not wear habits, but the goal hasn't changed. Compliance at any cost. The convent was just the beginning. Visit the ruins today, and you'll feel it. That electric stillness in the air. Birds avoid it. Compasses spin. And if you listen, truly listen, you'll hear it faintly. Metal scraping stone, a whisper of hymns no one alive remembers. Ask yourself, who benefits from erasing stories like this? Why do archives seal testimonies for centuries? Why do governments bury the past? Unless it's a blueprint they still use. The Ashfords weren't aberrations. They were engineers. Of silence, of obedience, of control. And now you know. You can't unhear it. The question is, what will you do with it? Ignore it, and you remain asleep, just another compliant subject. Or speak it, and join the lineage of witnesses who refuse to forget. The choice is yours. But remember, every witness the Ashfords ever created carried scars. Some visible, some buried deep, some still waiting to wake up.